Hello, welcome to Blue Dragon Actual. So sorry for not posting a video for some time because I was outside. In fact, I was a bit sick as well. I have a bit of cough and cold even now, but hopefully, like I'm recovering. And this week I'm planning to post at least two videos, if not more. And this would be a counseling video, like usual information about Actuary, and another would be that our long pending discount rate, the part 3, which is the final part, what happens with discount rate interaction between embedded value and discount rate. So before we move to that video, which will probably be released maybe in the weekend or Friday, so this is one thing that I have seen, and there is a lot of question. In fact, the people who is working with me, my colleagues, also a couple of my ex-colleagues was kind of asking for my suggestion, which society to choose, IFOA or IAI, because after the end of this year, there would be no exemption. And that's why I thought of making a video. And I have seen n number of posts on LinkedIn saying that I have finally become an associate, I finally became a fellow. But unfortunately, nobody has kind of explained the process of taking that exemption. I think that would have been very helpful if someone would have kind of written that process. I have not yet taken the exemptions from IFOA. So I think I'll also make a video later, maybe by next week, how to take exemptions from IFO. IFO is especially important. I think II is much easier. I have taken exemption from II already much before, but IFO is important. I think that's where some minor change of mindset, how I can be of value to others, because you writing you have become a qualified actuary or fellow is not adding much value to others. However, if you explain the way you have reached that path or reached that process or reached that point, that would have been helpful to many people. Just a change of mindset, just a minor change of mindset would be very important. Anyways, moving on. So which society to choose? So first of all, we'll probably see the advantages and disadvantages, and then we'll move to which society to choose. And I usually have seen the people don't give definitive answer. So this PPT or this presentation, I will try to give a definitive answer as per my as per my thought process. And you are free to disagree. You are free to do complete opposite of what I suggest. This is as per me. If I'd be in your place, this is what I would have done, right? So I'm just explaining. This is the timeline, 31st December. So if you have cleared paper from 1st Jan 2019 to 31st December 2020, if you have cleared any paper from IFA or IFA, you are eligible for exemptions. Even in fact, if you have cleared paper before that, with certain restrictions, I think in CA2 and CA3 there are restrictions, or CP2 and CP3 there are restrictions. But other than that, you would be getting exemptions. But the deadline for that is 31st December 2022. That I'm not displaying that here, but remember the deadline is 31st December 2022, which is couple of months away, right? So you need to take your exemptions from both the societies, IAI and IFA, by that date, right? And as I mentioned, the process for exemption, I'll kind of make a detailed video on that, exemption from IAI and exemption from IFA. In fact, if you visit IAI website, the process is very clear. It's you just need to fill a form, and I think right now it is, I don't remember, but I think it is self attestation. You don't require an fellow or an associate. Actually, you can self attest it and send it along with a bank draft, and you will get the process, and you'll get the exemption. Sorry, but in any case, I will make a detailed video on that. But just remember, 31st December 2022, you need to take that exemption from either of the societies. From 1st Jan 2021, there would not be any exemption. There is no exemption currently. So currently, you are not getting an exemption. If you have cleared paper from, say, CB2 from, IAI in the March 2021 attempt, and you have failed to clear that paper from IFOA, you will not be getting an exemption. So that has started from 1st Jan 2021, and going forward, there will not be any exemption from both the societies. So the advantages that we had earlier, that has been curtailed out, right? So yeah, that's why the reason for which society to choose, or the cause, or this discussion is important, because right now you need to choose one society and move in that society. You cannot just keep appearing for exam from both the society, thinking that if I clear this exam from IFOA, then I'll get the exemption from II. That would not happen, right? If you have written any paper from 1st Jan 2021, then that that was applicable earlier, but now from 1st Jan 2021, it is not applicable. So you need to choose one society, and that is what this discussion is about. So talking about the IAI, Indian Institute of Actuaries, and the advantage is low cost, much low cost. And I think for CP2, it's around 18 or 19,000 here, and there would be 62, 63,000, especially with the exchange rate. It is much higher, right? Because the pound is kind of, I think, moving up. It's around, earlier it was used to be 100 rupees somewhere, but now rupee has fallen a lot. So that's why I think it's even more costly. Uh, and in past, I have seen, like when I started, the CP series, CT series, or CA series, these have very low passing percentage. I remember there was a paper in CT3 where there was zero candidate passed. I was not writing that paper at that point of time, but when I was checking the pass percentage, there was 0% pass. There was the passing percentage hardly varies between 7% to 10% at that point of time when I was writing the paper. Now these days I see 20%, 25%, 30%, 40% even for most of the papers. So right now the passing rate for the lower papers or the lower theoretical papers, CP2, CP3, that have tremendously increased. And there is a reason for that. IFOA is losing revenue to IFOA because IFOA has higher percentage at point, which we'll see. And that's why they have increased the passing percentage. In fact, there was a declaration by the then II president that they would do that. What they have not done is to increase the passing percentage in the final paper, but they have increased the passing percentage in the lower paper, and that's why you'll see many people are clearing, these papers, especially from especially when the multiple choice question has come into picture, because now the question format has been made slightly easier because it's very difficult to write those mathematical notations. Another advantage of II that I've seen, that questions are not lopsided. What I mean is, in IFI, I've seen number of times the person who is setting the question, if that person is very comfortable, say in one chapter, say chapter 8, most of the question would be set from chapter 8 or related areas. But II deliberately make a attempt to set question from all the chapters. So that is a advantage that II have, and it doesn't mean that by some chance, if you are not prepared for one chapter, it doesn't mean that that is the end of the paper for you. But in IFA, that might happen. Also, I believe I has a better exam time, which is July and December. So if you are working, these are the time when the pressure would be slightly less, because these are not quarter end. Especially if you are working from Indian scenario and core companies, then I think the time from April to June would be very important because a lot of IID reporting happens at that time. So I think that is the reason I has shifted their exam time to July and December. So these are less pressure time, and if you're working especially in core companies, then that would be important. Also, in December, most of the companies which are located outside, they people go for vacation, and that is also not the quarter end, so you will have the advantage there as well. July is usually a low pressure month, even for the KPOs or captives. So I think this exam time is much better than April and September, where there will be a lot of exam pressure because the financial year end has happened in India in March, and you have to do some work there. And also the quarter end happens for outside companies or the offshore companies, and you need to work very hard there. Also in II, they are moving to the paper pencil or paper pen test, and I think that is more relevant because uh, I mean, my knowledge should not be judged on the ability for typing mathematical notation. It should be judged on actual concept. And because you are required to, as I mentioned, because you are required to do mathematical typing, there was a requirement to kind of reduce the conceptual level that was kind of tested in the paper. That is also one of the reasons that the passing percentage increased. So if you are not focused on mathematical typing, and typing is something that is not even required in practical work. We don't type summation sign or integration sign in any of the documentation that you prepare for our day-to-day work. So mathematical typing is needless unless you are writing a book. So I think that's why this should not be tested. And I think with having said that, with due regard to IFO and II, they have kind of simplified the method. So you don't need to type summation. You can also write summation something A to B, right? That also works. But I think removing the mathematical typing would probably increase the conceptual test or conceptual ability for the student, and they will be tested on that rather than how fast they can type, which should not be the case. So I think that is important. Disadvantages, as I mentioned, the IA has increased the passing percentage in the lower paper, but I believe that there is a regulation of pass number in essay papers, especially if you take out the essay 2 result or essay 3 result. You will see for a number of times the passing rate is 2% to 5% approximately, and they I think they deliberately do that because they need picture perfect paper, which is impossible, right? Which is impossible. Even the person who was checking the paper, if they themselves write the paper, they would fail, because it's very difficult to write a picture perfect answer in a exam condition, is in a stress situation, and somehow it boils down to luck. Having said that, if two people are passing an exam, then you should be that out of those two people would be passing the exam, right? So everything is a challenge and you have to take that challenge like that. But this is a fact, right? And that's why you will see many people would be stuck in essay paper. In fact, the institute conducts training, saying that there are many people who are stuck in essay 2 and essay 3, and that's why they are conducting this training. So they themselves admit that the passing of the essay paper is quite difficult. However, that is not the case for essay 7. I have seen many people who have difficulty clearing essay 2 or essay 3, they have moved to essay 7, then they have passed. So institute is kind of promoting the alternative field, right? So I've seen SS7 has 70%, 65%, 50% passing rate. Also, the number of people who are appearing for this exam is also less. So that is not a correct parameter. Like if 10 people appear and 5 people pass, then it will 50%. But in SA2, maybe 100 people will appear and 2 people pass, so it will be 2%. So the base plays an important role. But still, I mean, SS7 is much easier to clear. And there are instances where people have moved on from SA2 to SA7 and they have passed, and IID is coming up with an exposure draft where it is they are saying that if you are an ACE qualified actuary in any discipline, maybe life insurance, general insurance, then you are eligible to become an appointed actuary in other field as well. Something which I personally disagree with, but that is happening. So there is no need for you to clear SA2, although the appointed actuary regulation still needs to be revised based on that exposure draft. Right now, you cannot do that, but in future you might be able to. So even if you clear SA7 or if you clear SA3, it doesn't matter. But uh, obviously one would, if you clear SA2, then that's better, right? If people would prefer someone who has cleared SA2 rather than someone who has cleared SA7, unless that person has huge experience. Obviously, I is yet to get world recognition. So I work in an offshore company, right? So then usually when I have conversation with people who are located in say US, Canada, Hong Kong, and they try to understand if India has a society of actuaries. So they're surprised to know that India has a society of actuaries, and they usually believe that we are either doing it from CAS or SOA or IFOA. So even so, II is still not that well known. Maybe in 2 to 3 years, it would be very well known. People are uh, aware of II more now, and different people are visiting different, actual functions or conference in outside India, maybe Singapore, etc. So obviously that would follow. But right now, II is not that recognized in the world. Pass percentage, obviously, although they have improved, but it's still lower than IFOA usually. In some paper, it might be higher. And one of the things that I think is an advantage, but people might take it as a disadvantage, is in IFOA. I've known instances where people have passed their paper to someone else, and that someone else has kind of written some portion of the paper, or multiple people have written the answer and they have passed the paper, because there is no one tracking you. There is no camera recording, nothing, and that is unethical. But in II, you cannot do that. In fact, even in the offline setup, you cannot do that because there will be a camera on, but right now they are moving to paper pencil test format, so it's impossible to do that. And also another thing is knowledge of regulation is must. Once again, I believe that is an advantage of II, because it's not like that you know one regulation. Like I mentioned, a regulation, I know the appointed actuary regulation by heart. So I know that same regulation or similar regulation also exist in Canada, also exist in Hong Kong. So if you know one regulation, by default you will be knowing regulation from other countries, and there might be some variation somewhere, and it is very easy to remember those variation rather than remembering the entire regulation. Also, regulations are written in slightly difficult language, some legal sort of language, and that's why if you have not read regulation, it is difficult for you to understand regulation from other countries. As for example, IFRS 17, everything is based on regulation. To have that aptitude to understand the regulation, you need to read the Indian regulation first, right? In fact, it will be very easier. Solvency 2, it's based on regulations, and you need to understand what is written there to have a clarity of concept. So that I think is important for II, but people might have difficulty in understanding regulations from II, and without doing that, you cannot clear SA2 or SA3. It's impossible. So you need to know regulation. You need to remember regulation, which is a difficult thing, and that's why I put it in disadvantages. Although in long term, it would be a very advantageous thing for you. IFA advantages. So no regulation, no politics. You must have heard about things like that actually is a small world. So that is used as a threat. So if you are doing something, people will remember, and people will come after you, or you will have difficulty in switching job. In fact, many people told me that your like my LinkedIn post is somehow sometimes very rude, and I might have difficulty in switching. So I think and I'm not pointing, like, if someone might think that who have told this to me, that person might think that I am pointing fingers at them, but that is not the case. That person has given me a feedback, and I truly appreciate that person, because that person has given that feedback to me, considering that I can improve or it would help me. So there is nothing wrong in that, but there is that politics. So it might so happen that your paper is checked by someone who don't like you in India. Although I believe that there will be anonymity of paper, and the paper is not checked in that manner. Your name would not be revealed. But I don't know, because I have not checked paper. So in IFA, there would be no regulation, and such politics does not exist, because your paper would be tested by usually your paper will be tested or marked by people who would be outside India. There are also examiners from India, but I think the IFA papers checking is more transparent. They have two examiners, and right now they provide breakup for marks from both these examiners. There is also a mechanism to review your paper, or you can challenge the paper from IFOA, which I don't believe exists in II. Also, IFOA has world recognition. As I mentioned, most of the people know IFOA. Everyone knows IFOA, but very few people knows about II. Pass percentage is obviously higher than II. Once again, although it is not an advantage, but you can do that. Many people have passed paper, doing that, especially CP2 or CP3. You can adopt unethical means, right? And knowledge of regulation not required, but mathematical typing is required, right? So here you are tested on your mathematical typing or typing skill. In II, you will not be tested. I believe this is a disadvantage. These are producing weaker actuaries, but it is easier to clear the exam, right? And I am kind of today I am not I am considering the situation from that set of mind, how quickly you can become an actuary, rather than the knowledge portion. Obviously, knowledge is much more important, but today that is not my focus. And obviously, that's why easier questions are set, because these mathematical typing would be required if difficult questions are set. They are moving into multiple choice, I believe, for CV2 and CV3. I might be incorrect, but I think uh, they are moving into multiple choice questions, which will be easier to crack, right? Even your guess would work there. So I believe that that's how it is advantageous to write those papers from IFA. Disadvantages: slightly lower knowledge level, which I have observed. Usually, people who are qualified from IFA and people who are qualified from II, considering same level of sincerity, IFA people would have slightly bookish knowledge as compared to II, because in II you need to remember the regulation. That's the most important thing. The higher cost, obviously, and expected to increase due to exchange rate fluctuation. Difficult to work in higher level in core companies. You will have that knowledge gap, and if you are not sincere enough, if you have not filled for that knowledge gap, then the higher you grow, you will understand that there is a a knowledge gap with you and your peers, and people who have worked in core companies or people who have passed it from II, they would have better knowledge as compared to you. Also, as I mentioned, difficulty in understanding regulation. So once you read one set of regulation, you are well equipped to read another set of regulation. If they are more or less similar, you understand the language. But in IFOA, you are not required to memorize any regulation. You are not required to remember any regulation, which is a good thing because they are asking questions from their syllabus. They are not asking question outside syllabus. But I mean, that would create that knowledge gap, and you would have difficulty in work. You might clear the paper quickly, but in order to get those promotions, you need those knowledge, right? So what will you do? So suppose you are an existing student and you are writing actual papers before 2020. So check for which society you have more papers. If you have more papers from II, maybe take the exemptions from for the IFOA papers immediately if you have not done so, and proceed with II. Similarly, if you have more papers from IFOA, take the exemptions from IFOA and proceed with that society, proceed with the IFOA. If you have same papers from both society, then you can choose anyone. So suppose till now you are one of those lucky few that you have cleared all those, like every paper that you've cleared, you will get exemption from IAI or IFOA. Then you have the ability to choose. Then you right now you need to choose which society you need to go ahead with. Right? Probably in this attempt you can if you have attempted the paper from both the societies and if you have cleared the paper from both the societies, you still have that option to choose in the next attempt. But if you have failed paper from one society, then you need to proceed with that society from where you have cleared the paper, because otherwise you have to write this paper again, right? Also, if you are someone like my case, I have written or passed CA2 uh, from II, but for that paper, because I passed it earlier before 2019, IFO will not give me exemption, but that is only one paper, right? So other than that, I'll get exemption from all the papers. So from II, I have one paper left. From IFO, I have two paper left. So that's why I can write paper from both the societies, because money is not a constraint for me. And if I clear both the papers from IFO, then I'll become a fellow from IFO, right? And eventually there is a route called MRA route, for which I'll make another video sometime later. But you will if you are a fellow from II, eventually you will become a fellow from IFOA as well. And if you are a fellow from IFOA, you can become a fellow from II as well, right? So you can do that. There are ways and there are workarounds. So I mean, yeah, that does not matter. So obviously IFOA is better than II at this moment for confused candidate. So if you are not able to take decision based on what you should do, if you are stuck between knowledge and maybe your paper passing, quicker paper passing. So I think you should choose IFOA. Knowledge you can build on your own time, right? You can probably decide to write essay2 from II only. But if you are a fellow from IFOA, then your mental pressure is gone, and then you can write essay2 till the time you clear from II, right? So, and that would not be much costly as well. So that would mean that you have the knowledge and you have already become a fellow. So you have already enjoyed the perks of becoming a fellow, and you also have the knowledge, right? But that is a sincere effort that you have to do. Usually I have seen that people who have cleared essay2 from one paper, or essay3, or essay subject from one society, they after that they just hate writing any more paper, right? From any, they don't want to go for knowledge. So if you are that type of person, then that knowledge gap would exist if you are not sincere enough to cover for it. So you have to make a choice there. But I believe at this point of time, IFO is better, transparency wise, recognition wise, and I mean, uh, and even in the knowledge level, the gap is not that much for an equally sincere candidate, right? The gap is not that much. So what will you do if you are an existing student after 2020? Like you have started writing your paper from 1st Jan 2020. So I think if you should stay with II if you have only higher number of papers from II. Otherwise, switch to IFOA, right? And as I mentioned, if you are thinking about knowledge, then you will get that knowledge if you are working hard for it. If you are taking effort to read and understand the regulation, because the syllabus is openly available, right? Syllabus is publicly available from II. You can go to the regulation, you can read the guidance note, you can even follow my YouTube channel, and it has all the regulation that is required, right? So I have a playlist for IRDA regulations. You can go there and see, and probably give 2 3 days, and you will understand the regulation, and then you can go to the regulation, try to understand it yourself. You can ask question. That way, you can improve your knowledge. So there is nothing kind of stopping you from improving your knowledge. But it is difficult, if it is difficult for you to clear paper just because of that, regulation factor and luck factor, and person who is taking is way too rigid. So then that would stop you from becoming a fellow, right? And that is the case that I've been facing. I believe I have all the knowledge in the world to clear SA2, but I'm not clearing SA2. And that doesn't mean I'm blaming II. Obviously, if two, as I mentioned, if two candidates are passing I should be competent enough to be among those two candidates, because otherwise, uh, I am not competent enough. That's the simple thing. I am not going to blame anyone. I have cleared enough competitive exam in my life. This is something that I'm not being able to clear. So the blame lies with me. I'm not blaming anyone. However, that is also a fact, right? And it might, some people might not admit it directly, but that's a fact. And the institute also admit that there are difficulty, people face difficulty in clearing those papers. So how can it be such that a person cleared that paper from IFOA and that person cannot clear that paper from II, right? Or fail by a big margin. So obviously something is going on there. But that should not stop you from becoming a fellow, and you can move on to other things in life, right? You can probably, you know, do whatever. You can go travel the world without that headache of becoming a fellow, right? So you should first do away with that headache, and that is easier to do away with from IFOA, and then you can have all the knowledge in the world without any pressure, right? So that's why I mentioned that so if you ask today me, unless you have more papers from II, you should switch to IFO. I think that's my clear cut suggestion. I don't want to keep any confusion here, right? So uh, thanks for watching this video. I hope you have learned something from this video. I hope your answer is questions are answered. And if you have any counter opinion, counter suggestion, you're free to write that in the YouTube comment section. Just maintain the discipline. Don't troll anyone or don't troll anything here. My channel is not for that. But if you have a logical point, please write it. And I think all of us would gain from that comment, and all of us would be able to improve. So please like the video if you enjoy the contents for this channel. Lot more important videos following up. Please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you in future videos.